Իմանունը Vardan է, ես քանի տարի զբաղվում եմ game design-ի տարբեր պրոյեկտներով, բայց նաև զբաղվում եմ product management-ով։ Եվ ես կուզենայի, որպեսզի ավելի շատ audience-ի մեջ տեսնենք ովքեր են, ովքեր ունեն որևէ background կամ development-ի, կամ product management-ի, կամ առավել ևս game design-ի երևի, ուղղակի ձեռքեր բարձրացրեք, ովքեր որ game Okay, good. Ովքեր որ development-ի մեջ են։ Իսկ նրանք ովքեր որ gaming-ի մեջ են եղել կամ երբևէ եղել են։ Մի հոգի։ Good. Իսկ մի հոգի, երկու հոգի, շատ լավ։ Իսկ product management-ի մեջ Իսկ ովքեր գիտեն տարբերությունը ընդհանրապես, ինչա product management-ը, ինչա development-ը, ինչա project management-ը։ Լավ։ No, եւս երկու րոպե։ Okay. Okay, սկսելով product design and the art of science. And sometimes when we talk about product design, we think of just an hypothetical product which is to serve a target audience. And product design is sometimes confused by project management. So to go quickly through this presentation, we will find how to develop a winning product design that will be successfully launched in the market. And as an introduction, we will go and talk about design thinking. And by the way, who knows about, whoever heard about design thinking? And what is, yeah, only one person. Yeah, fantastic. Another thing would be understanding the components of design thinking. What is that? Of course, do's and don'ts of design thinking. And then I will introduce two cases. One case is about the art of law or the art of design, which is a combination of both art and science. And another one is Lean UX. And it's quite a common trend to talk about all these kind of things, guys. But basically, we need to keep in mind that product design and overall design thinking may vary from industry to industry. But whatever I could find, a common framework would be like very simple. We have design idea, and in the end, the target is that to validate that product. So convert this design idea into validated product. And how are we going to do that? Some of you perhaps have already heard about lean design and agile. And design thinking and overall the art of science of design has its roots in overall agile and another framework that is called self-determination theory. It's a very, not very, but well, in the tech industry, it's already too old. It had been found in 1960s. And people found that for going through this self-determination, we need to find autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Now, I will show how are we going to convert this framework into design thinking. Because, again, we can find many theories about this. So this is my fellow industry called gaming. And we will be going to convert this framework into simpler framework, which is called mastery, which is called purpose, and another one called autonomy. Have you ever heard about this paradigm? Yeah, perfect, fantastic. So these are the core of the overall design thinking, and we managed somehow to convert this into game theory, and in the center we have engagement. And this is, I think, a core for any successful game and any overall product launch. Yeah, nice guy. His name, by the way, is Amir Rudgard. Nice guy with a beard, and of course he has a mobile device on his hand. And what we can tell about this guy, mostly. A regular guy, perhaps loving mobile phones, I don't know, or mobile devices. But the thing is that he could be our potential customer. And whoever knows about the meaning of this word, he or she can surely tell that he knows about everything about this presentation. And what is this? Empathize. Who knows the meaning of this word? Yeah, perfect. Perfect, right? So being compassionate, perhaps, or understanding. Let me show you sometimes. Whenever I don't understand the word, I go here and see the synonyms. So understand. Yeah, sympathize, nice word, right? So yeah, I personally sympathize that guy, perhaps. And sympathize, empathize, we could use them interchangeably. So the components of design thinking are, first we empathize to our customer to understand his or her needs, what he wants. And as subcomponents, we have context, hypotheses, and behaviors. So in the very core of our product design, we need to place ourselves into the place of our customers or potential customers and understand what our targets are, hypotheses, what kind of products we want to serve, and behaviors. Another thing is define what we are going to define. Actually, it's a market need, or otherwise it might be called a gap. And this MVP, which stands for minimal viable product, exactly. Then we ideate. Ideate is actually solution. So we have definition of problem, and now we provide solution. This is just a standard thing, because if we are talking about design thinking, it's a must to go through all this framework. Then we prototype. Some key components or some key success factors are low cost and fast iteration, right? So we need to keep our projects or actually our Scrum iterations as fast and as cheap as possible. And then we test. Nothing new, right? So in a word, it is about Lean Agile. And this overall loop that build, measure, learn, creates value for the product. And yeah, this is our Rutgert. If we are talking about design thinking, we place him at the center, and that's it. Some caveats. So I have seen many companies working like this. So it is not about placing art into your center. It is not design placing into your center, although it is about design, but we should not do this. Well, another case, I had the chance already, at least a couple of times. Data also, it is not about your data being in the center. Yeah, it could be data, I wanted to say data-centric, but that's definitely wrong. It could be about data, yeah, it is about feedback, but it is not the data that is on the center. Instead, it is about your customer, actually our target market or target customer, understanding their needs. It is about lean. It is about culture. And it is about feedback. Well, some would say, okay, why are we putting feedback? Because in the lean, we already understand lean is a feedback-based. But basically, the thing is that you can do or cannot do lean. It's not a must, right? For a successful design product, it's not a must. But you cannot avoid this feedback. So as they say, there is no art without feedback. There is no design without feedback. Similarly, there is no product without feedback. So if you lose your feedback, then you will lose all your project. So do you have any questions up to this point? Then I will go further and introduce the next case, actually the next slide, which is the first case. And we will be talking about the game flow. So another transformation of design thinking might be like this. So you can take as various steps as you want, right? And you could go any direction, right? But there is only one path that defines your successful flow. So if I would go a little bit further, I would I would tell that in these two parts, perhaps the best that describes this chart is that means are preferred extremes, meaning that if you want to create an interesting winning flow, then you need to avoid this anxiety and boredom. Although sometimes you may want to go into anxiety and boredom, but your common flow should be somewhat in the middle, right? So if you have any questions regarding to this chart, then I can proceed to the next one. And yeah, as I said, we will be talking about the progression, and this is an example of level design in games. So you might see this, we call them blocking points, or actually those are difficult, right? Difficult. And do we have any business students here? Business guys or business graduates? Yeah, fantastic. So, okay, the rest may just close your eyes. But the next chart is also another thing based on these levels, but another dimension, which is called churn, right? So usually we want to know where our players or users, doesn't matter if it's an app or it's a game, where do they churn? Then we find that, okay, in level something around 29, 30, we have the highest churn level, meaning that most of our players tolerating up to this point, but then they leave here. Then business guys would tend to place these two on each other, right? So, and guess what the next slide is about? Again, it's about now regression, yeah. And we would like to run a regression to see if there is a relationship between those two charts, right? Okay, don't worry if you don't understand. I don't understand either. But at least I could tell that we have just magic number here that tells at least 70% with the J-state R-square is explained. 70% of our churn is explained by our difficulty. So what I would think also next, then why not to fix this churn by decreasing this difficulty, right? Right? Makes sense or not? I think yes, right? Because especially this statistics tells everything. It is good p-value. I mean, it's significant, relevant, quite explanatory model. Churn? Churn is actually leaving the game. I mean, do you know what is retention? Retention. So retention, yeah. So those who enter into your shop, then the tendency or the probability them coming next day and the other day. Churn is the negative retention, right? So it is the opposite of retention. And usually we have day 1, day 7, day 2, day 3, day 30 retentions. Whereas churn, it is just one unified KPI that only tells per level, like this one, telling that, okay, what is the percentage of your users that, yeah, that over time, that say this is level, or it could be even days, doesn't matter, right? Over progression, they say 10%, 15%, perhaps 15% of your players that came, or your users, then they met this level or this day, and they churned. So the majority of your people left, right, at that level, at that point, right? So
what was that blue bars graph?
A blue graph is about difficulty. So we are talking about game. Say, if you play a game, it may be difficult to pass a certain level or easy, right? So this is saying that this is one unit, this is easy, this one is a little bit difficult, this is more difficult, this is the most difficult, right? Yeah.
How do you measure the difficulty? Does that also depend on user?
No, this is defined by, yeah, very, very good question. So these difficulty levels are defined by ourselves. So from our level design, we put a big fat monster here, for example, right? It is.
Just our assumption.
Yeah.
The team created.
Yeah, exactly. Very good question. Sorry?
The level of difficulty is based on effort to time.
It can be via many KPIs. It could be time, yeah, as I mentioned, time spent to pass this level. It can be number of times played to pass that level, right? Perhaps in another day, it could be number of boosters, right, used to pass this certain level, etc. We could talk also about not only game, it could be a mobile app, right? At mobile, yes?
For example, if it's a mobile app, it's a dynamic mode, like it's a news app,
Yeah.
and you see that there are certain days that a lot of people uninstall your app.
Yeah.
How do you know what caused this kind of churn? Like?
So yeah, that's a good question. So in this case, instead of levels, we could assume that these are days, right? Day 1, day 2, etc., etc. And yeah, we need to define a couple of KPIs. Like, say, the first thing that would come to my mind would be the deepness of your interface. So how many clicks regular player has to do, or
very simple interface.
Yeah.
We measured, and the interface is fine. Like
Yeah.
can't be more simpler.
Yeah.
But then, like there are certain days when we get a lot of uninstalls. Like
Yeah.
maybe it's related to the data. Like there are some things that
Yeah, I get your point. But we assume that we don't have any bias in the data. We are having all the data validation, everything is correct. So this picture represents the reality, somehow the reality, right? There is no bias. So guys, we will have time for the questions. I'm a little bit limited. So let me finish, and I will answer to your questions with great pleasure. So again, forget about this, except one guy, about the regression. So again, the question is, am I going to fix this? Can I fix this? Because there is a big relationship, good relationship actually, between difficulty and churn. Any business guy or any product manager would think like that. And yeah, this part, which is before. And now, once we change this level, please pay attention to this one, all right? Better to show them side by side. Okay, this is before, right? This is before. And yeah, as you mentioned, this level design is upon us. We are going to decide this level is going to be this much difficult or not as much difficult. The next slide, which is after, that one. And nothing mostly changed. What's going on?
Maybe it's not consistent for them to play anymore.
Exactly. But this is exactly, so before that, what we were doing was just the designing things, right? This level, right? But what we couldn't actually understand was that actually this level design is fixed. And even if we are going to decrease this one level, it has little to nothing much to have with our churn. And what tells our lean design or design thinking is that perhaps we could come up with another model, another strategy of our level design, which would be, seems a little bit complex, but believe me, it's not. We could do some clustering. So we could find a certain behavior or common behavior. In this case, we found 3, right? But we could go in more detailed. And define those groups. And for each of those groups, define their own level design, right? So how we could convert regular design or regular design process or level design into lean design, right? So as a result, yeah, we had decreased finally that churn at that level. So, yeah. Another example is about lean UX, UI and UX, doesn't matter. So you can find tons of articles in the internet, some mentioning 15 most important points for successful UI, UX design. Others mention 5, 10, 15, doesn't matter. For me, we should pay attention to these 3 only, and mostly. So don't forget about your target audience, your device and platform, particularly important for mobile, and system design. I will explain what I mean by that. Regular app, now it's not a game. So this is health something app. Classical way of processing your UX. So first it says your name, then you provide your name. Then it says, when do you wake up generally? Another screen. Then you select. Then it goes your email. What's your email? Then your password, right? Quite a decent design, right? Isn't it? Because especially for the mobile, for the screen, we tend to have just one information per screen, and then we slide to the next, slide to the next. But didn't you notice that I have already slided through 6 screens? And it's risky because some users objectively may not tolerate that many screens. So the challenge was, how are we going to convert this many screens into one screen? And that would be the solution, perhaps, right? Not a very common design for the mobile. But this design happened to be more tolerable by players, by users, I'm sorry. So instead of going through all those 6 screens, also I didn't show another important screen just separately asking for your address, for your, I don't know, date of birth, etc., your weight, how many cup of coffees you usually take, etc. Why not to put this all in one screen, right? And make this part dynamic. Like this. So if you select this part, this relates to whatever you selected. And in another case, once you enter into your email, because for mobile it is also important to keep this part. We couldn't get rid of this part completely, right? Again, going back to another one. So we have this much screen, which is also nice, but we could shrink it. So how lean UX helped us? Mostly we came up with these 2. We never knew which one is going to win, right? But once you release and then you test, then we found that this one is more viable, right? More user-friendly.
So, like, when you log into Gmail, you enter your email and then password on the next screen.
Yeah.
It was on the same screen.
So these guys actually were following Google. Okay, perhaps it works for Google, but it doesn't work for this kind of audience. This audience is some guys aged higher than 40, even 50, perhaps, right? So again, it is very subjective. You would never know.
It was for less data, less.
Yeah.
Actually, this is not a login screen. This is a sign-up form. And registration. When you open your Google account, it's not 2 screens.
Yeah, it is just a list. Yeah.
It's like different purposes.
Yeah. My only point is that I don't have and I cannot do any favor to any of those designs. My only point is that, first of all, you need to come up at least with 2 or 3 mock-ups, 3 UX or 3 level designs, and then launch, release, and understand which one is more potent. Even perhaps for certain user, for one cohort, you could introduce this design, and for the other cohort, could introduce this design. That could also be very, very valid strategy, right? So again, because we are talking about lean, right? Lean is exactly this. So you need to flexible and bring exactly wanted experience for every group of cohort, right? And by definition, by default, we say that all users are not the same. They are going to have different experiences, different needs and gaps in the market. So yeah, this much about lean UX, if you have any questions. And now it's time for questions and answers, if you have, please.
For example, there was a game, like, it was very easy to play, but there was some point, it was an open world game, and then there is a point when you race, it's not racing here. So the racing was very difficult, like you try for days and can't pass this point. So a lot of people in forums say that they couldn't pass this point, but the developers say that they didn't intend to make it that difficult. It was just a mistake, so they fixed it. So in your case, you know that it is difficult, but there are some cases that you don't know that it is too difficult for users, and you also get churn rate. So it's the same for that, like with the dynamic data. Like maybe there is some bias, like they read the news they don't like and they uninstall that. It's the same in the game, but you can fix that. But in case of dynamic data, you can't understand why they uninstall.
Yeah, nothing to add, basically.
Classic churn shouldn't depend on the day of the week. Like churn is something that people do and then they leave. If daily is bad, then you get just people unsubscribing. That's something you can kind of figure out which type of content resonates that. But kind of churn is something more of a feature kind of thing.
You had a question.
Yes, thanks for your presentation. It was perfect. I want to understand the difference between the lean UX and, for example, agile UX. Are there differences between for it?
Basically, I wouldn't. Actually, I don't know if there is some saying called agile UX because it is the same thing, right? So agile, it's a process. How are we going to deliver that lean UX? Whereas lean, actually, those are the same. So, right? Unless you have this kind of versioning or you have this kind of cohortization, those are the same, right? Yeah, if you don't have any questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.